And just so you know, like I've on these training sessions lately, I've been the ones I record, I upload to YouTube, but just as a private video, so only you'll have the link to it. So it's
Oh,
not like
great.
you're gonna be all over YouTube getting copied and pasted to other ArchiCAD channels or anything. So does happen, but not on our videos. Okay, so talking about wanting to see, and I suppose I should create a new file here, so I'm not messing with this. Is Omar's practice file. Um, so I'm just going to create a new one. Yeah, and my computer is like begging to crash anytime now. I've got like 15 files open.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to look at creating custom fills for surfaces, right? So you want to be able to see the fill in 3D and in 2D, or is it just primarily a 2D thing?
Um, Probably a 2D thing.
Okay. So that technically it could just be a drafted thing if you're really only going to see it in the interior elevation, and it's like a pegboard. So like the circles, of course,
Mhm.
pegboard. It's probably like circles at like 1 inch on center or something, right?
Yeah.
So probably best to create a fill. You could create a fill and apply that fill to a surface, and then that surface would show in 3D and in 2D. Um, that way you're not drafting things over the top of a 3D model. So we'll go through that. Basically, anytime you're creating a custom fill, you can use lines or arcs. Over here in my toolbox, I'm just grabbing my arc tool, my circle tool, and I'm going to say that this is, let's just create it like an 1/8 inch circle. Zoom in on it right here. And then if they're whatever they are, like I don't know, like 3/4 inches on center or something. And you don't need to create the whole array. You just need an offset like that. And then a lot of times what I'll do is I'll create like another line and make that like 64th of an inch or something like that, because you do need this to tile. So if this, for example, is it would be, well, for 3/4, so it would be 3/8, right? 3/8 on center here. And then down.
Sorry, this is in plan.
It doesn't matter which view you're in. You could do this from elevation, you could do it from plan, from section, any view.
Okay.
And then what you want to do is just make sure that when this tiles, oops, this way, so this is going to be the starting point, and it's going to tile to like right here. So I guess I didn't get that right, because that is not the same distance. So it would be half the distance from here to here. That's 3/4. I thought that would be 3/8. Oh, it's not 3/8. Got off somewhere. So you just want to make sure that from this bottom origin point here, it's going to tile evenly from that point to here. And then when that gets copied up from this point to here, it's going to tile evenly. So it's kind of like this little 64th of an inch piece is kind of a dummy placeholder. And it does kind of get in the way. So it might be, did I make it 64? Yeah, it's as tiny as we can get. I don't know that you're going to actually see that in there, but this has been the best way I've seen to create this. Otherwise, you end up like with weird spacing and stuff like that. So you could do it without. If I select these and I go copy, edit copy, or just Command C, and then go to your fill settings, and we're going to say new fill, and it has to be a symbol fill for you to be able to paste this in here. And I'm just going to call this pegboard. And you can click paste right here, and it's going to create that spacing. So that's where like that actual spacing kind of gets important, because otherwise you end up with these clusters. So if you don't have this little placeholder here like I had before, then you have to play around with like whatever the spacing on this is, like 1 3/8 inches or something. I think that might be at 1 1/2 and 1 1/2 inches. Yeah, that looks about right. Yeah, so you basically, you draft it out, you figure out how you're gonna get it to tile, either with a placeholder to automatically create that spacing at a full stroke. Or you have to sort of do a little guess and check design on the stroke, or do the math and figure out, like, from here to the opposite side, what's the stroke for this to repeat. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Would you mind showing me, just quickly how, like, if you were to copy it with that, like, spacer you created?
Sure. So that, I would just select that as well, and we copy that, and that spacer I know is like from this bottom down and this left over is just gonna tile automatically, right, from there and then here. So that's basically the origin for this. So I copy all of that, and then I go to the fills, go new, symbol fill, and I'm just gonna give that a different name, and then paste that in here. And because that symbol fill is automatically setting where that repeats, although it looks like I was still off. It's uneven. It could also be the spacing on this. It's close. I don't think I was very precise in when I put that in there. And then it also adds this extra little blip, which may or may not print depending on the pen weight of your fill.
Okay.
The other thing that you want to make sure that you do, and I'm just going to use this one as the example, is you want to make sure that it's used with the surface fill, which is this fill type right here. It doesn't need to be used as a, excuse me, as a cut fill. Once that's done, you could say, okay, and if you wanted, you could just draft that right over the top of the elevation. You could grab your fill from right, where are we at here? Here's my symbol fills, and there's the pegboard fill right there. Set the pen to something like this, and that's going to show up on your elevation.
Gotcha.
You could take it a step further and actually make it show as part of the model, so you're not drafting things over the interior elevation, which is always preferred. The less 2D drafting you're trying to coordinate. You can imagine, like, if this is behind a cabinet and suddenly the cabinet gets wider, but your fill is overlapping the cabinet, you end up like with all that kind of headache. So what
Right.
you do is you take it to your surfaces, and all of my surfaces are going to be missing because this is a doesn't have the libraries loaded. But you could say new, and we could go whatever 05 pegboard, and then assign that surface fill here, pegboard, to the surface. You can use whatever pen you want to see on that interior elevation. Let's go ahead and remove that image. You could create a custom Photoshop image so it even shows in 3D. There might even be some already in the catalogs, although I don't think I have. Yeah, those aren't loaded in here yet, because this is a solo file. But you could Photoshop up a JPEG or a PNG that had that same repeating pattern. I could even, for example, in this one, if it's going to be a white pegboard, I could take that as my image. Just as a basic example, you'd want to Photoshop it so it actually looks a little bit cleaner. But you can just add that into here now. Obviously not named screenshot, but for now, the purpose is what we're working on. You do need to make sure that the size of this thing is proportionally what it needs to show on the elevation. So whatever that was, like, what were we at? We were 1.5 plus 3/8, so we were 2.25 inches or something. So you just set that to match whatever that surface was, and then say okay. And now, do I have any markers? No, not in here. Now in my model, if I have a wall coming across like this, and on that wall, the inside face is that pegboard right here. And if we look at that in 3D, it has that pegboard in 3D.
Oh, okay.
And then because that fill is actually applied, I'm going to go ahead and drop an elevation in here on the ArchiCAD layer. And this is the right side of the wall. Nope. So now that surface shows up here as well. It's a little bit nauseating to look at. And then if that surface is like just too bold, too dark, you can go back to your surfaces. And the cool thing about this is it's like a global control. So if that's just too dark, I can bump it down, and then the whole project wide, it's going to be using that lighter gray pen. So now there's no drafting or anything to apply that surface to the elevation or the 3D model.
Gotcha.
Which that would be the ideal way to sort of work through these sort of surface interior elevation things. I know that drafting patches and fills and things like that happen, but depending on sort of how prolific in the project this is, it might be worth it to invest the time. At the very least, I would say create that custom fill so that you're not drawing, 10,000 circles or 1,000,000 circles over an interior elevation.
Okay.
If it's really just a small area, a small strip or something, you can take one circle and use your multiply command for a matrix and say that the spread is whatever, like 1.5 inches by 1.5 inch spacing. All right, and then you can drag it that way and get a bunch of circles laid out pretty quickly. But that's the least ideal way to handle it, because now you've got just a ton of circles all over the elevation that are just cluttering everything up.
Right.
With the fill, if the cabinet moves, you can just grab the edge of that fill and drag it. If it's on the actual wall itself, obviously the cabinet in front of that wall is going to automatically mask out that surface. So anything trim and things like that don't need to be jogged around and trimmed out to those fills.
Okay, great. Yeah, because it's like basically like an entire room, like a work room in our garage. So I figured a fill would probably be the most ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, and if honestly, even if you didn't do the surface image, even if you didn't do that, here, you didn't create a surface image here, you just created a surface and applied that fill to it, at the very least on your interior elevations, it's part of that wall at that point.
Oh, okay, great.
So yeah, like if I want to change that surface, if they're like, oh, we're not going to have the pegboard on that, then you just come back in here and say, well, this is going to be whatever, gypboard or some other surface. And you're not going back through and tracking down where the fills were and how many you had on each wall. It's just part of the model at that point.
Perfect.
Okay. And then you mentioned a custom light fixture and light fixture symbol.
Yes. So the one, I mean, the kind of typical one that we see a lot in our project is like this, I don't know the brand, but it's this sconce, very simple. I basically took like 2 circular beams to get the form. It's like a round sconce. But right now they're just 2 beams. And then I figured I'd check in with you and just I guess convert that to an object and get that to show up with a proper symbol.
Yeah. So this starts to get a little bit tricky, but if it's recorded here, so hopefully you can get back and re-reference it if you need to. And
Okay.
if not, I do a lot of the custom object building. So if you really need like a specific symbol with a specific model, I can save it out and script it out for you.
Oh, great.
Let's just say, like, as an example, I'm just going to put in a column, and this is going to be representative of my light fixture. Now I have this set to origin at 0, 0, and this is sort of a critical part because we're actually going to get into a little bit of GDL scripting. It's not overly complicated. We just need to isolate out a couple of script commands and do some copy and paste. Because really what we want to do is take our 3D component and a 2D component and combine those two together.
Mhm.
So I have my light fixture here. I'm going to look at it in 3D and make sure that it looks right. So if it's like, whatever. Oops. No, it probably doesn't even matter. I'm just going to leave it at that height, I guess. But then what I usually do is I grab a screenshot of it. And that's useful because it gives you a preview image when you actually save this thing out.
Mhm.
And then I'll go back to my floor plan here. And then on my floor plan, I'm going to say that my wall sconce fixture symbol, and I'm going to draft this with arcs, lines, circles, whatever. Right, so from this point, I want this to associate to the center of this. And I can use whatever I need to, lines, arcs, fills, text even can work in here. But if this is my light fixture sconce symbol, oops. Grabbing the wrong. Right, so there's my symbol. You can put additional hotspots in here even, and the hotspots become like a snap point for that fixture symbol. And then what I can do is save this as my 3D object. So I'm going to select that object. I'm going to go to File, Libraries and Objects, Save Selection as Object. I'm going to save this as, we'll call this sconce 3D, and say Save. And then I grab that screenshot. So now I can say Change Details and Set Preview Picture. And take that screenshot here. Now that's going to be my thumbnail for that object. And that's all I really need to worry about. There's all of the attributes that are going to be used with that object, but we don't need to worry about that just yet. So that's my 3D symbol. And now I need to place my 2D symbol with where it's going to align with this 3D. So if, for example, I want this back edge here to be up against the wall because it's a sconce, then I would place this right here. If it were a ceiling fixture and I want it to be centered on that fixture, I would place it right here. That makes sense. Like basically, because they're not the same size, I need them to align where they need to be justified to relative to this 0, 0 position.
Okay.
So a wall sconce, I would want the wall edge of the 3D portion and of the 2D portion to align. So I'm done with the 3D portion. I'm just going to move that out of the way here. If I go to my object tool, I usually place the object after I create it. So I'm going to put this on the ArchiCAD layer. So here's the 3D object. That's not a column anymore. That's the object that I created from that column. And then I'm going to take this 2D stuff that I drafted. And again, any 2D components. It could be lines, fills, arcs, hotspots, splines, text. Usually not labels, or don't use any objects because those get scripted as like macro parts, which can go missing. So you just want kind of drafting primitives. And then you go to File, Libraries and Objects, just like we did before, Save Selection as Object. And I'm going to call this sconce 2D. And here's the attribute list for that. I don't need to change the details for this because I'm just going to combine these two together into that one object. So then I say OK, and then go back to my object tool. It's going to default to the last saved object, so I can just place that here. So here's my 2D object. Here's my 3D object. They're both objects. They're no longer lines, fills, arcs, columns, beams. Now I can, with those two objects selected, I can go to File, Libraries and Objects, and Open Object. And it's going to warn me I have two open or selected, so I'm going to open them both. And I can see up in the tabs here, I have my 2D and I have my 3D objects. The interface here, it's a little bit, I guess, confusing if you really get into it. But the only thing we care about here is this 2D script. We're just going to select this whole 2D script. We're going to copy it from here. And we're going to go into the 3D version now. Go to the 2D script. And at the top of this 2D script, or the 2D script here, we're going to paste this in. Okay, with me so far?
Yes. Yeah.
Now there's a few commands in here. This is where we want to get into looking at the script of this thing. So there's this mul command. The mul command is what lets something be stretchable as an object. Because we modeled this to the exact size, configuration, plan symbol that we want, we actually don't want this thing to be stretchable. And then the add command is because ArchiCAD wants in the sort of, if you picture all of these numbers represented as coordinates within an XY plane, it wants everything to be in the plus plus quadrant of that XY plane. So it adds, because we saved it from 0, 0, there's an add command to shift it up and over to be in the plus quadrant, which we don't care about because we saved the two scripts relative to each other. So we want to void out the mul and the add commands for all scripts. So you just select the mul and the add lines and click this button right here. That voids those out.
Okay.
And then just to verify, so this is the script that's saved out with the 3D column or the 3D component. I'm gonna do the same thing here. And now when I look in my 2D script, I can see that it's a white pen in this, so it's kind of hidden. But you can see that arc cutting through that 3D script, scripted piece. If I click on my parameters here, I should be able to change this. Oh, that's that one. That's not what we want. We'll change that to 91. A little guess and check here. There we go. And then you can even rename this. This is my 2D line pen. So that I can see that that wall edge and my 2D symbol are lining up now. Okay, now we go to the 3D script because the 3D is doing the same thing. The 3D was shifted over and up and has a mole command. So I'm just gonna void out the add and the mole lines here. So that way, when I place this against the wall, I know that the 3D instance is in the exact same location. It's no longer shifting up and over. It's saved out with all of these coordinates saying like X, Y, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, all of these ones and zeros and numbers are relative to the 0, 0 position, not their shifted over position. So I've voided out the add lines and the mole lines from 3D and 2D. Now I don't want to see the rectangle usually as part of that 2D script or 2D symbol. So I can just select all of the stuff that was saved as part of the 3D sconce, and I can void all of that. And now my 2D symbol looks like this. My 3D looks like this.
Okay.
And all I have to do now is say save. Go back into the floor plan view. And here is that sconce. It's going to default to whatever the pens were, but if I switch and switch back, it's going to go to the default pens of that thing. So every future placed instance is going to look like this in plan. It's going to have the default pen for that 2D line pen, right? We renamed that 2D line pen, is now saying 162. Every surface that I saved as part of the 3D component is now available here. So you do want to make sure that even if it's not the right surface when you save it, it's sort of like, have you done any of the Twinmotion work?
Yes.
So you know how like you have to have two different surfaces in order to get two surfaces into Twinmotion? It's the same thing when you save 3D model components as an object. You have to have two different surfaces to have them script out as two different surfaces.
Okay.
And that's really, I know that that's really kind of daunting to think about, but once you've done it once or twice, it gets to be pretty simple. Like it's just looking for, you're saving out the 2D, you're saving out the 3D, you're saving them out. Most importantly, you're saving them out with a relationship to 0, 0, that the two are relating to each other. And then once you combine them together, you get, we have a hotspot right here, so I could snap that right to the wall. The center hotspot here is a little bit wonky because I wasn't careful about how I drafted it. That would technically be, if like the distance from here to here were equal, that would be in the center of the element.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I was kind of really quick and loose with it, but otherwise, yeah, and that's what you have. And then in 3D, you do see that you get these kind of weird extra hotspots. Those are just the 2D hotspots projecting into 3D, which is actually nice because that gives you that hotspot in the floor plan symbol right here. So that translates through to 3D as well.
Oh, okay.
Where we added that hotspot right here, that's also visible in 3D at the top and the bottom of the element. Now, because we got rid of the mole command, you cannot resize or rescale this thing. So usually what I do is I put all of this stuff on a temp hide layer so that if I ever have to edit it, I can just change the 3D piece. As long as it's being saved from the same place relative to 0, 0, you can change the component, save it back out and copy and paste it into the object again.
Okay, gotcha.
There's a link I'll send you. I hope it's still live. Oh, nope, it's not. I had a website for a while. But I haven't actually paid for the URL in about 3 years. It was sort of my online journal of GDL scripting.
Oh, okay.
But I haven't actually renewed the URL for it, so apparently it's dead. But Maybe I need to resurrect that. It was just a Google site, so should be easy to get back if I ever need it. But there's tips like that, and there's a lot of resources for learning GDL scripting if it's something you really get into. But this is sort of the most basic. I mean, at the very least, you could take the columns that you have and select them. One thing that I would do is add that hotspot where they need to join to the wall, just so in the self-generated 2D symbol, you get that point. So you could even just like select the 3D with the hotspot and go to libraries and objects, save selection as object. Save that as an object, and now when you place it, it's going to look like whatever your columns look like, but it's going to be a single object rather than 2 or 3 columns or a whole bunch of morphs or whatever they are.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
And then you get that hotspot, so you know, like you're snapping that hotspot to the wall. That's exactly the center point of where it needs to be located.
Great. And I guess, I mean, one question I have that kind of popped up, I mean, say just for simplicity, if I wanted to use, if we had like, I guess, a 2D sconce object already in our library, that would be, because a sconce is so simple, that would be appropriate for this sconce. It would be the same process, but I just wouldn't draft it out. Would it be some, like, would I be able to sort of do the same thing with the scripting?
Yeah, you can. So let's just take a look at what's in our library. So this is Omar's practice file again. But if we go to the Walker Warner library and electrical, and where are we at here? Lighting, fixtures, generic. I don't know what we have for it. Like here's a sconce. I doubt the 2D symbol is anything decent on that. Yeah, there's really not a ton of great things in here. But like, let's say this is the symbol that you want. But the 3D version of this is just not even close. This is actually one that I sort of, it's a work in progress, but it's a monopoint light with the recessed box and everything in there. But it's not the light that we want, but I do like that symbol. So you select the symbol, select the object, place it into floor plan, and then you can take that stuff and just explode it. That's edit, reshape, and explode, or I think command equals is the default. I'm not going to keep the 3D component, and then it's going to convert that to lines and fills. So now if you placed your beams or columns or whatever in a way that makes sense relative to that, now you have your 2D and your 3D automatically together. Could be the same thing with things in the out-of-the-box library. The ArchiCAD library does have decent electrical symbols. So if there's, you know, a symbol in here that works for you, you can place that. You can explode it into lines and fills. You don't want to save this object as an object because it'll save as a macro. But you could save this as the object with or without the text. The thing about the text is it's not really editable. It takes a lot of extra scripting. Well, not a lot of extra scripting. If you needed an editable label to associate with your 2D symbol, that's something we can do later on. So as you get more comfortable with the copy and paste combination of those. But at the very least, this gives you a starting place for a 2D symbol.
Totally, yeah. Because I think for now we have like a placeholder sconce that I don't know, I think Chris had in the library already, in our embedded library, and it had like just a really simple symbol like this. So I figured that would be great to kind of keep that symbol. It kind of works.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
I think, I mean, that's everything on my list.
Okay.
And thanks again so much. This is super, super helpful. So
okay.
I
I can go through some stuff in terms of like 3D navigation and editing and model management kind of stuff if you want. I know a lot of times these things come up because like a job captain or project manager will be looking over your shoulder and they'll just be like, oh, I wouldn't do it that way. And it's like a big red flag that you're doing it differently. And maybe it's slower, maybe it's not. Honestly, there are a lot of things in ArchiCAD where I know like Rena, for example, she wants to be able to place the thing exactly where she wants right away.
Mhm.
And so she has all these tricks to like when this beam needs to be 2 feet off the corner of the wall, she makes that happen and she places it right where it needs to go. Whereas like just a big fan of like I'll drop the beam in and then I'll move it to the corner and move it over 2 feet. And is it nice and elegant? No, but I could do it like 1,000 times before I could place it to 2 feet off that corner. So um, I think it's basically just always looking for the faster way to do things, and whether that's the faster way for De Janeiro or the faster way for you, those are two different issues. Um, I think some things that just to be aware of and remember, if you're not already doing it, the selection methods on the arrow tool. Um, so like selecting left to right versus right to left on the info box here. So if I want to select these columns, clicking left to right is going to click just those two columns versus right to left is going to select everything within that window.
Mhm.
So it's a feature I'm sure that you're using, but one that oftentimes gets forgotten. As much as possible, not like shift clicking all of the selection stuff that you need is going to help a lot. So like drag selections or like find and select, setting up like if you eyedrop and say I want all walls on this layer. It's a couple of steps, but it grabs those things really quickly, especially if it's like a big model with thousands of walls in it, you can isolate those things down really quickly. Also selecting a layer and keeping the quick layers palette as part of your work environment. I don't know if you have that in there, but like if I say hide other layers, that's a really quick way to just filter down the model in 2D and in 3D. What else? The marquee tool, the bold marquee versus light marquee. Really like one of the biggest things, especially when you're working on interior elevations, because so much of the interior elevations are live to the 3D model and you get into these like really tiny spaces. Just having like a bold marquee and isolating that out by marquee gets you access to those rooms to really edit and manipulate. And then additionally, don't be afraid to save extra views. So in your view map, there is a design and process folder near the bottom. You can add a subfolder in there and just be like Catherine's working views or Catherine's interior elevation views, and just like right click and save this already cropped view, because that marquee cut saves with that view. So you can get back to that cut area and layer combination really quickly.
Okay, great. I know, I mean, it was really, really helpful. Chris, a while back, set up a view like when I was making like custom door leaves.
Mhm.
He set up a view for that for modeling. So I guess like I don't know how much it matters, but like for things like that, is that typically what people on projects do where
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, it happens all the like this design and process studies folder gets pretty overloaded on a lot of the bigger projects. One of the important things to just sort of as far as model management goes is go ahead and save as much as you need in there, but realize at some point it's going to get too full to actually navigate. So don't be afraid to like purge your old stuff back out.
Gotcha.
Or update it. Like if you go right click and save current view and call this like KT cutaway path 1, right? And later on you realize, oh, I need to actually include other stuff. Instead of just saving a new view, what you can do is like reframe the view, isolate it back out, and then right click and say redefine with current window settings. So you're not creating a new view, you're just redefining this one so that next time you use it, it's going to be this view instead.
Gotcha. And then just a quick question, just refreshing on the marquees. Um, is it the bold marquee that has, I mean, I've been using the bold marquee when I'm working, on the interior elevations, like you've been saying. But I remember, I guess, back from my KAA days, gosh, years ago now, but there is like, I guess the main difference between the lighter marquee and the bold marquee, the lighter marquee, is it just only certain elements or certain stories in
It's
that?
the current story only.
I see. Okay, gotcha.
And the word of caution there is like if you're using the marquee to like, for example, let me just grab some stuff and copy it over. If you're using the marquee to stretch something out, even if you know for a fact that everything above and below needs to be stretched, I still use the light marquee and I'll stretch this over say like 5 feet. and then just go down a story and repeat the process for each story. That way I just know for a fact I'm not messing up any of like the site contours or site walls, because it's very likely that a lot of these projects will have like extra stories below or above just for burying stuff, and then that stuff gets thrown off, or you're not aware that a layer is on that other story because there's nothing on that layer on the current story.
Mhm.
So
Okay, gotcha.
yeah, the bold marquee is going to isolate or stretch everything on all stories from the floor plan.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, De Janeiro didn't give me a whole lot of direction. He just said like some basic navigation and selection refreshers. So, that's a quick 5-minute rundown of some quick tips, I guess, just to keep in mind. Like I said, you've been using ArchiCAD for long enough that I'm sure those are things that's nothing new. But yeah, if there's anything where it's like super repetitive or tedious tasks, or like something feels like it's just taking too long, don't hesitate to reach out and we can do a quick screen share and look at, because there's 10 ways to do anything in ArchiCAD, and there's the really fast way, the really slow way, the really sloppy way, and the really kind of neat and elegant way, and there's no like one best way every time.
Yeah, definitely. Because yeah, I agree. I mean, I had a great conversation with De Janeiro, and I think now I'm entering certainly a comfort zone with ArchiCAD where I think I can pick up on those things and be, to use your word, a little more elegant, as I'm working. So that's a goal I have going forward. But yeah, this is again always helpful, always a good refresh. So I'll definitely keep you updated and let you know.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, let me know how that light fixture works out. And if it is something that you're just like feeling overwhelmed by it, just send me what you want it to look like in 2D and what it should look like in 3D, or send me like a module, or direct me to where your beams or whatever for that are. Especially if it's something where like you have a cut sheet. I think a lot of times, especially when you get into using like the morph tool and stuff, you can get a ton of polygons and super detailed objects. We actually have some shower fixtures, for example, that are just really crippling on files because there's so many polygons to them. So if it's something like that where it's super complex, or you have specifics that it needs to match this exact cut sheet, you can throw that on my desk and I can put an object together for you as well.
Oh, perfect. Okay, yeah, because I'm glad you brought that up. That's another edit, not necessarily right now, but they're starting to send us the cut sheets for all the plumbing fixtures and things like that, and
okay,
just super specific. So I'll be in touch with you about that.
Yeah, a lot of the plumbing fixtures anymore, I've been using some of the out of the box parts. Things like a toilet's a toilet, and yeah, there's like specific toilets, but we're not really rendering that part of the model. So if we can get something that's ballpark close enough, that's great. But the kitchen faucet, that might be like an actual rendered design thing that we want to see.
Exactly.
And shower fixtures and things like that, we do a lot of like detailed shower studies. So that sort of thing, go ahead and throw my way if you need me to help out. I know De Janeiro and Tom are always looking to get me more billable on projects, so if it's something I can build with the project, that's also helpful to me. So
Okay, great.
okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end the recording. I'll upload this and send you a link later this afternoon when it's done.